The night was cold, and the alien sky burned with two fading moons. In the middle of the small colony, a cage made of glowing steel stood surrounded by frightened villagers. Inside it, a creature larger than any man growled softly, its body covered in thick dark fur and strange silver patterns that pulsed like veins of light. They called it the Beast of Rule, a name whispered only in fear. To them, it was dangerous, wild, and cursed. The people shouted around the cage, "It must be killed before sunrise." One cried, "It destroyed our crops." Another yelled, even the elders, with their shaking hands, nodded in agreement. The decision had already been made. The beast would be sacrificed at dawn. They believed it would bring peace back to their valley. Among the crowd stood a human named Jack, a traveler from far away. He had arrived on this alien world a few days ago, bringing tools, food, and medicine to trade. When he first heard about the beast, he wanted to see it himself. Now, standing there in the flickering firelight, he could see more than just a monster. He saw pain, confusion, and hunger in its glowing eyes. The creature breathed heavily, each sound filled with exhaustion and fear. Its left leg was chained too tight, bleeding from metal cuts. Jack frowned, whispering to himself, "It's hurt, not evil." No one else seemed to notice, or maybe they did not care. To them, it was just a threat that needed to die. Jack turned to an old alien beside him. "Has anyone tried to understand it?" he asked. The old one shook his head quickly. "Understand? No one gets close. It will tear you apart." Jack looked back at the creature, whose eyes glowed faintly in the dark. They didn't look angry anymore, they looked lost. As the villagers prepared the fire pit for the sacrifice, Jack walked toward the cage. The guards shouted at him to stop. But he didn't listen. He raised his hands, showing he carried no weapon. "I just want to look," he said calmly. The creature watched him with narrow, unblinking eyes. Its breathing grew faster, low growls rumbling in its chest, but Jack kept walking slowly. Step by step, when he reached the cage, he knelt down and looked inside. Up close, he could see its face, a mix of beauty and danger. The silver lines on its fur seemed to move like liquid light. Its fangs looked deadly, but its eyes, they were sad, almost human. Jack's voice was soft. "Hey there, are you really what they say you are?" The creature tilted its head slightly as if it could understand. For a long moment, the world went quiet. Even the wind stopped moving through the trees. Then, Jack slowly reached into his bag and pulled out a small metal container. Inside was a piece of dried meat. He held it up, his hand steady. "I know you're hungry," he said gently. The villagers gasped in horror. "Don't!" someone shouted. "It'll bite your arm off." But Jack didn't move away. The creature sniffed the air, the glowing lines along its body brightening. It took a slow step forward, then another. Its sharp claws scraped against the metal floor. Jack's heart pounded, but he didn't show fear. He whispered, "It's okay. I won't hurt you." Finally, the beast leaned forward, its massive head just inches from his hand. It sniffed the meat, hesitated, then carefully took it. Its teeth grazed Jack's fingers, but not a single scratch appeared. The crowd fell silent, even the elders stood frozen. The human had just fed the most feared creature in the colony, and it hadn't attacked. It simply chewed the food quietly, never taking its glowing eyes off him. Jack smiled softly. "See, you're not a monster," he said for the first time. The beast made a strange sound, not a growl, but something like a low, gentle hum. Jack stepped closer and placed his hand against the bars. The creature's head lowered, pressing lightly against his palm. A warm pulse of light flowed from its body through the metal bars. Jack could feel its heartbeat, strong, steady, alive, and something inside him whispered, "It's not evil. It's scared." The villagers began whispering among themselves, "Did you see that? It listened to him. Maybe the human can control it." Jack didn't care what they thought. He looked at the creature and said quietly, "You're not alone anymore." The beast blinked slowly, almost like it understood those words. In that small moment, under the pale light of two moons, something changed forever. A bond was formed between a human and what everyone called a monster. And while the villagers feared what would happen next, Jack knew deep in his heart that this was only the beginning. He had seen kindness where others saw danger, and the galaxy was about to learn what a human's compassion could awaken. The next morning, sunlight fell across the quiet valley. Smoke still rose from the burned torches of last night's ritual, but something had changed. No one could forget what they saw. The dangerous alien beast had taken food from a human's hand and stayed calm. It had not attacked, not roared, not harmed. It had simply eaten, and watched the human with eyes that seemed almost gentle. Jack returned to the cage again, carrying a small bowl of water and a few pieces of dried fruit. The villagers followed from a distance, whispering behind him. "He's crazy," one said. "He will die today," another added. But Jack didn't care. He walked straight to the cage with a calm face and soft eyes. The beast, Rue, as he had quietly named it, sat in the shadows. Its breathing was slow, its silver markings dim in the daylight. Jack knelt down, setting the bowl near the cage. "Morning, Rue," he said softly. "You must be thirsty." Rue's head lifted. Eyes glowing faintly, it looked at Jack, then at the bowl, then slowly crawled closer. It sniffed, hesitated, and began to drink. The villagers gasped again, unable to believe their eyes. Jack smiled, resting his hand on the cage. "You see? You're not what they say you are," he whispered. Rue blinked slowly, the same low hum rumbling in its chest. That sound felt like trust. For a moment, even the wind seemed to stop just to listen. Later that day, Jack spoke with the village chief. The alien chief's voice was old and rough. "Human, this creature has killed before," he said. "It destroyed ships, burned fields, and tore soldiers apart. You cannot change what it is." Jack's eyes stayed calm. "Maybe it was forced," he said. "Maybe someone made it fight." The chief frowned. "Even if that's true, it's dangerous." "You risk all our lives," Jack simply answered. "Then I'll take that risk." That night, as the twin moons rose again, Jack sat near the cage with a small lantern. He began to talk, not to the villagers, but to Rue. He spoke about Earth, about blue oceans and green forests. He told stories of rain and songs of birds, and though Rue could not answer, its eyes stayed fixed on him. It was listening, learning the rhythm of a human's voice. The sound was new, warm, and gentle, something it had never known before. When Jack grew quiet, Rue shifted closer to the bars. It made a soft sound like a sigh. Jack reached out his hand. This time, Rue pressed its forehead against the metal near his palm. The gesture was simple, but it carried meaning. Trust had begun to grow. Jack smiled, whispering, "Good night, Rue." But not everyone shared his kindness. As the human slept near the cage, a few villagers gathered behind the huts. "We can't wait for him to fail," one said. "If the beast breaks free, we'll all die," another agreed. They planned to end the creature before sunrise. With blades and fire, they would burn it in its sleep. Just before dawn, as they crept near the cage, Rue's eyes snapped open. It sensed danger before any sound was made. The silver lines across its body began to glow. A deep warning growl filled the air. Jack woke instantly, grabbing his lamp and shouting, "Stop!" The villagers froze, their fear clear on their faces. "Put down the torches," Jack said, standing between them and the cage. "This isn't the way." One of them shouted, "It's a beast! You're protecting death itself." Jack shook his head slowly. "No, I'm protecting life." Rue's growl softened, its glowing dimmed as Jack spoke. The people looked between the human and the creature. The sight was unbelievable. The beast listened to his voice like a loyal hound. Jack lowered his hand and whispered to Rue, "It's okay. They're just afraid." The villagers lowered their torches one by one. The firelight faded and silence filled the air. For the first time in years, no one called the creature a monster. They only stared at the man who stood without fear. From that morning onward, the village stopped trying to kill the beast. But they watched closely, waiting to see if the human's courage would last. Jack continued to bring food and water. He cleaned the wound on Rue's leg and spoke softly as he worked. Every day the creature grew calmer. Every day. It seemed to understand him a little more. Sometimes when Jack laughed, Rue made a deep sound that almost matched it. It was strange, almost like laughter in return. When night came again, Jack looked up at the stars and said quietly, "I don't know who made you suffer, but you're free now. As long as I'm here, no one will hurt you again." Rue's glowing eyes reflected the stars above. It leaned close to the bars, as if to listen to the human's heartbeat. And somewhere deep in the shadows of its mind, a memory stirred. A voice long forgotten, gentle and kind. The first voice of peace it had ever heard, and it belonged to a human. The night came heavy and still. The wind carried the scent of smoke and dust through the alien village. Jack sat near the cage, his back against the post. Eyes half closed, Rue was quiet inside. glowing softly in the dark like a living ember. The villagers slept far from the cage, keeping their distance as always. Only the sound of insects and the soft breathing of the beast filled the night. Then far away a strange sound echoed, a hum deep and metallic. Growing louder each second, Jack's eyes opened. His instincts sharp, he stood, scanning the dark horizon in the distance. Faint lights moved across the hills, small, red and fast. He frowned, whispering, "That's no storm." The sky suddenly flashed bright white. A beam of fire struck the farthest hut. A thunderous explosion shook the ground, sending sparks and sand flying. Screams filled the air, children crying, alarms ringing through the village. Raiders, mercenaries from the outer colonies, had come. They believed Rue's body was filled with rare energy crystals. They wanted to kill it, drain it, and sell what was left. Jack ran toward the cage as chaos broke loose. Villagers scattered in panic. Hiding behind rocks and walls, Rue began to roar, its body flaring with bright light. The old chains glowed red from the power inside it. Jack shouted, "Rue, stay calm!" He reached the cage, sparks raining around him. He could see fear in the creature's glowing eyes. It wasn't angry. It was terrified. Blaster fire tore across the ground. Jack ducked and rolled behind the cage, shouting to the villagers, "Get to the caves! Take the children!" The raiders landed their ships on the outskirts, armored figures stepping out with heavy weapons. "Kill the beast. Take the body intact," one of them ordered. Their leader laughed. "That human will make good bait." Jack's heart raced. But he didn't run. He grabbed a fallen spear from the ground, primitive, but better than nothing. He shouted toward the raiders, "You want the beast? You'll have to go through me." The leader sneered, raising his blaster. Gladly. Before he could fire, the ground trembled. Rue's roar filled the night, deep and powerful like a mountain cracking. The cage burst open, metal melting and flying in all directions. A wave of energy rippled through the air, knocking several raiders off their feet. Jack shielded his face as bright light poured from Rue's body. When the light faded, the creature stood free for the first time. Its massive form cast a shadow across the burning huts, its eyes locked onto Jack, not with rage, but with recognition. Rue moved in front of him, spreading its body like a wall of living armor. The raiders opened fire, red beams slamming against Rue's side. Each shot made the creature stumble, but it didn't move away. It stayed between Jack and the attackers, taking every hit. Jack shouted, "Stop! You'll destroy everything!" But the raiders didn't care. They fired again and again, until Rue's growl turned into something different. A pulse of pure energy erupted from its body. The blast tore through the air, shattering weapons and throwing soldiers backward. One ship exploded in midair, another fell into the sand, burning like a star. When the noise stopped, only silence remained. The wind howled through the ruins. Rue stood trembling, smoke rising from its fur. Its silver veins flickered weakly. The light fading, Jack stepped forward carefully, reaching up to touch its leg. "Easy, Rue," he whispered. "It's over." "It's over now." Rue lowered its head, eyes dim and tired. It made a low rumble that sounded almost like a sigh. Then it turned, gently nudging Jack with its snout as if to check if he was hurt. Jack smiled, patting its side. "You saved them." "You saved all of us." The villagers began to come out from their hiding places. They looked at the human and the beast standing side by side. The monster they had feared had just saved their lives. The chief stepped forward slowly, his old eyes wide. "You tamed it," he whispered in disbelief. Jack shook his head softly. "No, I just showed it kindness." The villagers bowed their heads in silence. Some cried quietly. Others whispered words of awe. The air was filled with the scent of smoke and new hope. For the first time in many generations, the people no longer saw a monster in chains. They saw a protector, and beside it stood a human, tired, covered in dust but smiling. As the twin moons rose higher, Rue looked up and let out a long, deep call that echoed across the valley. It was not a roar of anger, but a song of freedom, a promise that it would never again be a weapon. Jack listened to that sound, his eyes reflecting the silver glow of Rue's body, and in his heart, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning of something far greater than anyone could imagine. Morning came slowly after the battle. Smoke still rose from the ruins of the raiders' ships, and the ground was scarred with deep burn marks. The villagers walked among the wreckage, whispering to one another in disbelief. They had survived, but not because of their weapons or walls. They had survived because of the very creature they once feared. Rue rested near the edge of the valley, its large body curled like a mountain of fur and light. Jack sat beside it, wrapping bandages around his arm where shrapnel had cut him. The beast's breathing was steady now. Soft and calm, he looked up at it and smiled. "You did good, Rue. You saved them all." Rue's eyes opened slowly, glowing faint gold in the morning sun. It let out a small hum, almost a purr, as if answering. The village chief approached, his robe torn, his face tired but thoughtful. "You risked your life. Human," he said. "And for what? That thing could have turned on you." Jack looked up at him calmly. "It didn't. You saw it yourself. It protected me. It protected everyone." The chief frowned. "Maybe for now. But what if the old stories are true? What if its rage returns?" Jack shook his head. "Then we'll find the truth instead of living in fear." The chief sighed and turned to one of his guards. "Send a message to the outpost. Tell the Science Council what happened." Within a day, sleek silver ships arrived from the nearby alien city. Scientists stepped out, tall beings with glowing suits and scanners in their hands. They surrounded Rue cautiously, pointing strange devices at it. Jack stood between them and the beast. "Careful," he warned. "It doesn't like weapons." One of the scientists, a female alien with soft blue skin and kind eyes, spoke gently. "We only wish to understand. You may not know what you found, human." Jack crossed his arms. "Then tell me." She nodded, typing something into her wrist device. "Our records call this species the Valoroth. Long ago, they were not beasts. They were protectors." The villagers listened silently as the scientist continued. "They were once guardians of worlds, able to absorb energy and restore life. But during the Great War, their kind was captured and altered. Their minds were broken, turned into living weapons." Her voice grew quiet. "Only a few survived. Most were destroyed or lost." Jack looked at Rue, his chest tightening. "So it wasn't born violent," he said softly. "It was made to be that way." The scientist nodded. "Yes, what you see as rage is actually pain. Its neural systems were damaged by years of control and war." She paused, looking at Jack with curiosity. "But this one, this Rue, responded to you. That is not supposed to happen." Jack smiled faintly. "Maybe because I treated it like a friend, not a weapon." The scientist studied him, her eyes shining. "Humans, you are strange beings. You see compassion even in chaos." As they spoke, Rue lifted its head, looking toward the horizon where the raider ships once were. Its silver markings glowed faintly blue, and it let out a low rumble that made the scanners flicker. One of the scientists gasped, "It's communicating!" The female scientist turned quickly. "Yes, it's sending energy waves, but they're not random. They're patterned, like language." Jack took a step closer, whispering, "You can understand me, can't you, Rue?" The creature blinked, the glow in its eyes pulsing once, twice, like an answer. The scientists were amazed. "Recording every moment. This could change everything," one said. "A living link to pre-war species." But Jack saw something else. Rue's eyes looked sad again, staring toward the stars as if remembering something painful. He whispered, "You lost your home, didn't you?" Rue let out a low, mournful sound that shook the ground beneath them. The female scientist placed a gentle hand on Jack's shoulder. "You may be the only one it trusts. If you allow, we would like to take it to our research facility." "No," Jack said quickly, his tone firm. The scientist looked surprised. "Why not?" Jack looked up at Rue, whose massive eyes followed him closely. "You don't lock up a friend to learn about them," he said softly. "Rue isn't an experiment. It's alive. It's free." The villagers murmured behind him, some nodding in agreement. The chief stepped forward, his voice quiet now. "Perhaps the human is right. Maybe it's time we stop repeating the mistakes of the past." The scientist hesitated, then finally smiled. "Very well, human. But know this. If you continue this path, the galaxy will notice. Some will not be pleased that a Valoroth lives again." Jack looked out at the horizon, his jaw set, then let them come. As the day ended, the scientists departed, leaving behind supplies and medical tools for Rue. The villagers began rebuilding their homes, but something had changed in their hearts. No longer did they see Rue as a curse. They saw it as a protector reborn. That night, as the stars stretched across the sky, Jack sat beside Rue once more. He looked up and whispered, "They'll come for you again, won't they?" Rue turned its head slightly, its glowing eyes meeting his. Jack smiled faintly. Then they'll have to go through both of us this time. The wind was soft, carrying the faint hum of the beast's breath, and far above, in the endless black of space, a signal pulsed, a silent alarm from the fallen raider ships. Reaching the ears of those who once controlled Rue's kind, they knew now that one of their weapons was alive again, and they were coming to take it back. The days after the scientists left were calm but uneasy. The villagers rebuilt their homes. Children played again in the fields, yet in every heart there was a quiet fear that the peace would not last. Jack felt it too. That strange weight in the air, a silence that was waiting to break. Rue had recovered well, its silver markings glowing brighter now. It followed Jack whenever he worked in the valley, moving slowly, carefully. Some villagers still kept their distance, but many had begun to greet it. They brought fruit, flowers, and small gifts. Leaving them near the rocks, the once feared beast was now their guardian. One evening, Jack stood on a cliff overlooking the valley. The sun dipped low, painting the sky gold and crimson. He whispered, "It feels too quiet tonight." Rue lifted its head beside him, letting out a low growl toward the dark horizon. Its eyes narrowed, scanning the skies as if sensing something unseen, and then it happened. A sharp, deep hum filled the air, distant but growing louder. Jack looked up and saw bright lights moving in formation across the clouds. He felt his stomach tighten. No, it's too soon. Rue's body began to glow with warning light, its energy pulsing faster. The villagers ran from their homes, pointing to the heavens. "Ships! They're back!" someone shouted. Moments later, the first hunter ship broke through the clouds. It was massive, black metal with red engines, humming with deadly energy. Then another followed, and another, until the sky was full of them. Each carried the same mark burned into its hull, a symbol of chains around a glowing star. Jack recognized it instantly from the scientist's data. "The Control Dominion," he whispered. "They're the ones who made Rue a weapon." The ships hovered above the valley like predators over prey. A voice boomed from the sky, cold and mechanical. "Attention, colony. You are harboring stolen property. Surrender the Valoroth or face eradication." The villagers screamed and scattered for cover. Jack clenched his fists and shouted back, "Rue is not your property." But the voice ignored him. "You have 1 hour to comply." Jack turned to the chief. "We need to get everyone to the caves." The old alien nodded, barking orders as people grabbed what they could and ran. Rue stood still, its glowing eyes fixed on the sky. Jack ran to it, placing his hand on its side. "They're coming for you," he said quietly. Rue lowered its massive head, pressing gently against Jack's shoulder. Jack nodded. "Then we stand together, soon." The first blast hit. A column of fire tore through the empty village, destroying what was left of the meeting hall. Jack was thrown to the ground as the air filled with dust and heat. Rue roared, its energy flaring like lightning across its body. The sound shook the mountains, echoing for miles. "Now or never," Jack shouted, climbing onto Rue's back. He grabbed the reins he had made from woven cable, holding tight as Rue rose to its full height. The sky burned with streaks of light as the hunter ships descended. Rue charged forward, claws digging deep into the ground. It leapt into the air with an explosion of dust and flame. For a brief second it hung weightless beneath the burning stars. Then it struck, crashing into the first ship with all its might. Metal screamed and fire erupted, sending debris raining across the valley. Jack shouted over the roaring wind, "Keep moving, Rue!" Blaster fire rained from above, but Rue dodged with surprising speed. Each time a beam struck its body, it absorbed the energy, glowing brighter. Then it unleashed it back in a burst of blue light that split a ship in two. The villagers below watched in awe as the creature they once feared fought to protect them. But the hunters were relentless. New ships arrived. Surrounding Rue from all sides, a voice thundered again. "You cannot fight the Dominion. The beast belongs to us." Jack yelled, "Not anymore!" He switched on his communicator, connecting to the scientists' network. "This is Jack Morgan. Dominion ships attacking Ruel Colony. Send help now." Static answered him, followed by a faint reply. "Hold on, human. Reinforcements are coming." But Jack knew it would take hours. He looked around. The valley was burning. The villagers were trapped. He turned to Rue, shouting, "We need to draw them away." Rue seemed to understand, letting out a loud cry that shook the mountains. It began to run, faster than before, toward the canyons beyond the colony. The hunter ships followed. leaving the villagers behind. The chase was furious. Energy beams ripped through the sky. Turning night into day, Rue leapt over rocks and rivers, each step shaking the ground. Jack held tight, shouting over the wind, "You're doing great. Just a little farther." Finally, they reached the deep ravine, a place filled with old mining tunnels. Jack had a plan. "Down there, Rue, go," he yelled, pointing to the dark canyon below. Rue plunged into the shadows, its glowing body vanishing beneath the cliffs. Above them, the hunter ship circled, scanning for movement. Jack's voice was low but steady. "They won't stop. Rue, they'll keep coming until one of us falls." The creature looked down at him, its eyes glowing brighter than ever. And in that silent moment, the bond between human and beast burned stronger than before. They were no longer master and creature, no longer human and alien. They were partners, ready to face the darkness together. Above them, the enemy prepared for the final strike. Below, in the shadowed canyon, a plan was already forming. And Jack whispered, "They think they're hunting a monster. Let's show them they're wrong." The canyon was dark and deep, its walls echoing with the sound of distant engines above. Dust and sparks floated in the air as the hunter ships circled like vultures searching for prey. Jack and Rue hid beneath a rocky ledge, the glow of the beast's body dimmed to avoid detection. Only the faint sound of their breathing broke the silence. Jack sat on a stone, bruised and covered in dirt, his suit torn from the fight. He looked up at the massive creature beside him. "You saved them again," he said softly. "But they won't stop. Not until they have you back." Rue turned its head toward him, eyes glowing faint gold in the shadows. It let out a low sound, a deep hum that seemed to tremble the air. Jack smiled weakly. "Yeah, I know. We can't keep running forever." Above them, the loudspeaker from the lead ship blared through the air. "Valoroth Specimen O7, you were built for war. Submit and be reclaimed. Resistance is failure." Rue's eyes narrowed, the silver lines on its body flashing with faint blue light. Jack clenched his fists, whispering, "Don't listen to them. You're more than what they made you." The ships began firing plasma flares into the canyon. Blue light burst across the rocks, forcing Jack and Rue to move. Rue leapt from one ledge to another, carrying Jack higher toward a narrow ridge. Energy blasts exploded behind them, sending waves of heat that burned the air. Jack held tight to Rue's back, shouting, "Keep going! They can't hit us if we reach the peak." When they reached the top, the sky opened wide, filled with fire and light. 3 hunter ships hovered in a circle, forming a trap. From one of them, a mechanical voice said, "Human life detected. Identified as insignificant. Terminate if non-compliant." Jack raised his head, shouting, "Come and try!" One of the ships launched a missile. It streaked toward them with a shrill whistle. But Rue swung its tail, striking it midair. The explosion lit up the whole canyon, scattering rocks like rain. Rue roared, the sound thundering across the cliffs. It absorbed the energy from the blast, its body glowing white-blue. Jack's eyes widened. "You can use their power, can't you?" The beast turned toward him. As if answering yes, the hunters fired again, this time with focused beams meant to burn through anything. Rue stepped forward, standing tall. Spreading its arms wide, the beams struck its chest, but instead of piercing, they vanished into its glowing body. The air rippled with energy, and then Rue unleashed it all at once, a blinding surge that struck 2 ships instantly. They spun out of control and crashed into the mountainside, exploding into flames, but the 3rd ship was faster. It swooped down and fired a direct shot, the blast hitting Rue in the side. The creature stumbled, crying out in pain. Sparks bursting from its wounds, Jack was thrown to the ground, sliding across the rocky surface. "Rue!" he shouted, crawling toward it. The beast lay still, its glow flickering weakly. The ship circled overhead, charging for another strike. Jack's heart pounded. He looked at his wrist communicator, its power core still active. He hesitated for only a second before pulling the battery pack from his chest plate. It was a high-energy unit, enough to power Rue for one final charge. He ran to the creature, yelling over the roar of engines, "Rue, listen to me. You gave me hope. Now take my strength." He pressed the glowing battery against Rue's wounds. For a moment nothing happened, then the ground began to vibrate. The light spread through the beast's body, silver veins turning bright as lightning. Rue rose slowly, its eyes blazing like twin suns. It stood between Jack and the ship, its body larger, brighter, stronger than ever before. The hunter ship fired again, Rue caught the beam midair with its claws, absorbing it like fire into water. Then it unleashed a roar so powerful the air itself seemed to bend. A wave of pure energy burst outward. It struck the ship in a single perfect arc, slicing it clean in two. The wreckage fell in burning pieces, crashing into the canyon below. The blast faded, and silence returned to the valley. Only the soft wind moved now. Carrying the smell of ozone and smoke, Rue stumbled, its glow dimming, and fell to one knee. Jack ran forward, placing a hand on its snout. "You did it, Rue," he whispered. "You saved everyone again." Rue looked at him weakly, its eyes warm and gentle. Then it lowered its head beside him, breathing slowly, exhausted but alive. From far above, streaks of light appeared, new ships entering the atmosphere. But this time they bore no red markings. The scientists had arrived with defense fleets drawn by Jack's distress call. The battle was over, the hunters were gone, and the Guardians had returned. Jack stood beside Rue as the rescue ships landed around them. The villagers climbed from their hiding places, cheering and weeping. Children waved from the cliffs, shouting, "Rue, the human did it!" Jack laughed softly, patting the beast's side. "No," he said quietly, "we did it together." As the sun rose over the broken land, its golden light fell on the human and the alien guardian. One small man, one great beast, and between them, faith. Faith that trust was stronger than fear. Faith that kindness could rewrite history. And as Rue lifted its head to the morning sky and let out a long, peaceful cry, the sound echoed through the mountains. A song not of war, but of freedom. The sun rose over the valley, warm and golden. Smoke drifted slowly into the sky from the wreckage of the hunter ships. The wind carried a calm silence that had not touched this land in years. The war was over, at least for now. Rue rested near the edge of the canyon, its massive body half buried in the soft earth. Its silver veins glowed faintly under the morning light. Weak but steady, Jack sat beside it, his hands stained with dust and dried blood. He had not slept in almost 2 days, but his eyes were full of quiet peace. "You did it, Rue," he whispered softly. "You're finally free." Rue turned its massive head slowly, its golden eyes meeting his. It made a low, gentle sound that vibrated through the air. Jack smiled, patting its cheek. "Yeah, I'm still here." The creature's breath was warm, its heartbeat slow and strong. He leaned against it, letting the morning breeze brush over him. For the first time since arriving on this world, he felt like he truly belonged. By midday, the rescue ships had fully landed. The scientists stepped out first, followed by the village chief and dozens of colonists. Children ran ahead carrying flowers, their laughter echoing through the valley. They placed the flowers near Rue's resting place, whispering thank yous and blessings. The old chief bowed deeply to Jack. "Human, you've done what no one else could." Jack shook his head, smiling humbly. "We just trusted each other. That's all." The female scientist, the one with calm blue eyes, approached quietly. She looked at Rue with wonder and sadness. "It's incredible," she said softly. "We've never seen one of its kind alive. Not like this." Jack looked at her. "Then don't cage it. Don't take it apart. Just let it live." The scientist nodded slowly. "We won't, we'll protect it." She turned to the others, raising her hand. "From this day on, no one will harm the Valoroth again." The villagers cheered, their voices rising into the sky. For them, the beast was no longer a curse, it was a blessing. They began to build a great structure around the canyon's edge. Stone by stone, they raised pillars and carved symbols of light and peace. They called it the Shrine of Trust, a place to honor the bond between human and guardian. Days passed and peace returned to the valley. Rue slowly regained its strength, spending the evenings watching the stars. Jack often sat beside it, telling stories of earth, of rain, forests, and gentle animals. Sometimes he laughed. "You'd like the oceans, Rue. Big waves, deep blue. You could swim there for hours," Rue hummed softly, its golden eyes glowing brighter, as if dreaming of the world Jack described. But peace did not mean the end of all things. Messages began to spread across the galaxy. Rumors of a human and a Valoroth who fought side by side. Some called Jack a hero, others called him a fool. Many feared what the return of a guardian beast might mean. But Jack didn't care about titles or rumors. He cared only about the creature beside him, the life they had saved one evening. As the sky turned violet, Jack walked to the cliff alone. The stars shone above like tiny fires. He opened a small communicator and recorded a message. "To anyone who finds this," he said quietly, "remember that monsters aren't always born, they're made. And sometimes all they need is someone to believe they can be more." He ended the message and looked up at the stars, whispering, "That's humanity's real power. Compassion." Behind him, Rue rose slowly, its body glowing brighter with each breath. It stepped beside Jack, towering like a mountain yet calm as a river. Together they stood watching the night sky. Jack smiled. "You see those lights? That's home." Rue tilted its head, letting out a deep hum that sounded almost like a sigh. The two stood there until the twin moons rose high, a human and a beast. Bound by friendship that defied the stars, years later, songs were sung about them across the colonies. Children would whisper tales of the human who fed the beast. Travelers spoke of a glowing guardian that watched over the valley at night. And those who visited the Shrine of Trust swore they could still hear the low hum of Rue in the wind. They said when the night was quiet enough, you could see a faint blue glow moving under the stars, a sign that the guardian still lived, protecting the world it once saved. As for Jack, some say he returned to Earth. Others say he stayed, building a new home beside Rue. But the truth didn't matter. What mattered was the lesson their story left behind. That kindness is the greatest force in the universe. That faith can tame even the wildest storm, and that sometimes, the smallest act, feeding a frightened creature, can change the fate of galaxies. Under the light of the twin moons, Rue lifted its head one last time. It let out a long, deep call that echoed across the mountains and through the stars. It was not a roar of war or pain. It was a song of peace, a song of a promise kept, a song that would never be forgotten. And somewhere in that endless universe, the legend lived on. The story of a human who refused to fear, and the beast who learned to trust again. Together, they had rewritten what it meant to be alive.